Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Scrutiny Committee of Housing, Planning and Economic Development. I am Neville Walker, the Chairman of the Committee, and Councillor Adam Peacock is the Vice Chairman. The committee tonight is joined by officers of Democratic Services, Legal Services and Planning. We have also two Cabinet members present, Councillor Stephen Hillier and Councillor Robert Salisbury. Turning to item 1 on the agenda, I will now ask our legal officer, Tom Clark, to conduct the roll call, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And we're meeting virtually tonight. COVID levels are falling, but still high. And the decisions of this committee are persuasive, but not binding on the council. So if I could start the roll call, Richard Bates, Councillor Richard Bates.
Present.
Councillor Margaret Belsey. Councillor Alison Bennett.
Present.
Councillor Paul Brown.
Present.
Councillor Robert Eggleston.
Present.
Councillor Bruce Forbes.
Present.
Councillor Janice Henwood.
Present.
Councillor Clive LeBand.
Present.
Councillor Gary Marsh.
Present.
Councillor Julie Mockford.
Tom, Julie Mockford isn't on the committee anymore. She's been replaced by Councillor Forbes.
No, Councillor Walker, she's here as an independent representative. Councillor Adam Peacock.
Present.
Councillor Dick Swetman.
Present.
Councillor Neville Walker.
Present.
Councillor Webb.
Present.
And Councillor Margaret Belsey.
Present.
We have a full attendance, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I will now ask you to read out the virtual meeting explanation, please.
I've read that, Chairman. We are meeting virtually.
Okay.
And we'll carry on.
Turning to item 2, to notice substitutes in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 4, substitutes at meetings for committees, etc. I have Councillor Alison Bennett substituting for Councillor Hatton. Councillor Swetman is substituting for Councillor Coe-Gunner-White. Item 3, to receive apologies for absence. I've received apologies of absence from Councillor Hatton and Councillor Coe-Gunner-White. 4, to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda, and I would ask members to raise their hands if they have any. Thank you, I don't see any. Turning to 5, to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the Scrutiny Committee for Housing, Planning and Economic Growth held on the 20th of January and the 28th of April 2021. I would ask members to vote for this, yes or no, according to the yes or no buttons, please, to show agreement or otherwise.
Sorry, Neville, where is that on the screen?
Sorry, who is that asking me?
Bruce.
It's in reactions.
All right, thank you.
Sorry? Yeah, okay. There are 11 votes in favour, 1 abstention. That abstention is me because I was not here at either meeting. Thank you. 6, to consider any items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. So we turn to the main business of the evening, the district plan review and update. And I would ask Judy Holmes and Sally Blomfield to introduce it for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. We're asking the committee this evening to consider the proposed draft updated district plan ahead of the first round of public consultation. This work is at a really early stage and it has a very long way to go before even this committee will see it again. The papers explain that the council is obliged and required to update the plan by 2023. And those of you who have been here before will know how long it takes to adopt a plan. Hence my reference to it being at a very early stage. The council has a duty and obligation if it wishes to avoid speculative, unwanted, unplanned development. If we don't update the plan, the council's 5-year housing supply will be challenged by developers, as I say, resulting in unwanted, unplanned development. This update requires the council to review all its policies against the NPPF, the new standard method for establishing housing need, and other local evidence, such as water neutrality, and updated evidence, such as the retail study. As a result of our review, the housing need number has increased, along with the level of unmet need from our neighbours. We are proposing in the policy 12 new policies, 27 updated policies, and 10 policies that remain unchanged. To meet the increased need set by the standard methodology, we're proposing 20-year allocations, all of which are supported by updated policies and spatial strategy. Scrutiny Committee asked to consider the draft plan and to recommend to the Council that they issue it for the first round of public consultation. As I've already said, this process is very long, but is extremely democratic. And whilst this is the first round of public consultation, there will be a further round, what is known as the Regulation 19, before the plan is then submitted to the government for public examination by the Planning Inspectorate. Due to the complex nature of this work and the size of the document, I'm going to ask the Divisional Leader for Planning to take you through the key elements of the plan to support its scrutiny. Sally, if you could just do that, please.
Thank you very much, Judy. As Judy says, I'll give you a high-level walkthrough of the proposed plan. Just note that where I refer to a page number, that's the page number of the committee report pack shown in the bottom right-hand corner, not the number of the plan itself, which is the central number. So the first thing to say is you'll have noted that the new policies have been grouped thematically, which we feel makes the document easier to navigate than the current district plan. Chapter 3, starting on page 40 of the report pack, sets out how the plan will deliver sustainable development. You'll also note the use of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and these are woven throughout the whole document. The intention is to demonstrate how the proposed policies of the emerging plan seek to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And this is very much in line with changes in the National Planning Policy Framework. Chapter 5, starting on page 48, sets out vision and objectives. And it aligns our 3 priority themes with those within the National Planning Policy Framework: environment, economic and social objectives. Chapter 6 starts on page 50, sets out the proposed spatial strategy of development across the district. Page 51 sets out the key principles of that new strategy. And the table 1 on page 52 is key in that it sets out how that strategy translates into growth at each of the district's settlements. The policies themselves start on page 57. Each policy is accompanied by a table which clearly sets out its review status. Is it new? Is there a minor mod? Is there a major mod? And that's to help people understand the status of the policies. Judy's already highlighted how many new, how many modified policies there are. Chapter 8, starting on page 57, is a sustainability chapter. There's a new policy on climate change, which sets out the Council's strategic approach towards climate change. There are new higher standards which the Council expect development to be assessed against. Chapter 9, starting on page 68, is about natural environment and green infrastructure. This includes a new policy on biodiversity net gain, setting out the minimum requirement for 10%, but also identifying that on significant sites, we expect a higher standard of a 20% biodiversity net gain. Chapter 10 sets out countryside policies, and you will note there is little change. Chapter 11, built environment, again, very little change. Chapter 12, starting on page 93, sets out transport policies. And you'll note the inclusion of a policy on EV charging, setting higher standards for provision than that set out in recent changes to building regs, particularly in respect of commercial development. Chapter 13 on the economy starts on page 70. The changes here reflect significant changes in legislation and use class order and the need to review particularly town centre boundaries. Chapter 14 on housing includes policies on all the proposed allocations. So that's 4 significant sites, 21 other sites, and 2 sites allocated for older persons accommodation. In addition, this chapter sets out new policies supporting and encouraging self and custom build housing, older persons accommodation, and starter homes. Chapter 15, starting on page 172, is the final chapter of policies and deals with the important subject of infrastructure and how we will secure this as part of plan making. And finally, of note, chapter 17, which sets out saved policies from other plans. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I would now invite Councillor Jonathan Ash-Edwards to speak, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for allowing me to speak at your meetings. I'm not a member of your committee. Good evening, colleagues. Chairman, I'd like to just start by thanking officers for the very detailed work and evidence base that has been undertaken on the district plan review. And I think that it is always beneficial for this kind of work and information to be out in the public domain, and people will be able to consider and scrutinise it accordingly. And I want to just make clear that what I'm about to say is no reflection on that work, but relates to the policy judgments that we must all make as councillors representing our communities. Chairman, as members will know, the council is mandated by national policy and by a policy inserted into our current district plan by the planning inspector who examines it to undertake a 5-year review, which is now due. And the results of the review are published and they are before you, so the community can understand the scale of the challenge that we face in mid-Sussex, and it's important that that transparency exists, as I've said. However, I'd like to ask the Scrutiny Committee to pause consideration of the initial proposals so that further work and lobbying can take place. I think it's now sensible to press the pause button given the significant issues that impact the Council's planning responsibilities. I wanted to tell the committee that I'm writing to the Secretary of State, Michael Gove, calling for our housing targets to be reset at a level more consistent with our environmental and infrastructure constraints, and I'm liaising with our local MPs to help make that case in Westminster. As members will probably know, the Levelling Up White Paper is due to be published shortly, and I hope that the government will use that as an opportunity to review the housing numbers currently set for parts of the South East, such as ours, through the current standard methodology. It is essential that the plan maximises the amount of brownfield and windfall development that can be counted, albeit that brownfield sites are very limited in mid-Sussex because the amount of built land in our district as a whole is comparably small. The amount of unmet need from neighbouring councils that we are expected to take needs to be very thoroughly scrutinised, and the rapidly emerging issues raised by Natural England about water neutrality in West Sussex also need much greater clarity and resolution. And with fellow council leaders in Sussex, I've already written to the Secretary of State about many of the issues that have come out through Natural England's work, and indeed the Local Government Association has been involved in that too. Ultimately, it is essential that we have a plan because the alternative is speculative development with developers in the driving seat, but we have to make sure it's the right plan for the long-term future of our district and our communities. Mid Sussex is a great place to live, and we must keep it that way by balancing the need for new homes for local people needing to get onto the housing ladder with the important protections for our environment and critical improvements to our infrastructure that our communities need and must always come alongside new developments. Thank you very much, Chairman. I hope that is a helpful set of comments to begin your meeting with.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jonathan Hedge-Edwards. I hope members will agree, in view of what's been said, that there's absolutely no point in us sort of carrying into detailed discussion tonight, and we just more sensible to defer discussion, as he says, until further work and consideration can take place. And we also know the outcome of government policy, particularly with the white paper. And to this end, I understand that the Councillor Adam Peacock has a motion he wants to put before the committee. Would you now please set out, Councillor?
Point of order, Chair. Point of order, Chair.
Point of order, yes.
So under our constitution, as you know, Chair, I submitted an amendment to the recommendations to you at 17:20 on Monday. Also submitted it to the monitoring officer at the same time, and the monitoring officer read it at 17:21 on Monday. And as you know, under the constitution, amendments are considered in the order that they are received. Our amendment was received first, so you really should discuss our amendment before you discuss.
Happy to do that, Councillor Eggleston. Have you got a seconder for your motion, please?
Chairman, Councillor Eggleston is referring to a matter where there is already a motion on the table. This report, there's a recommendation, but there's no motion. So it's not a question of who has the amendment first, because there's no motion at the moment, and it's up to you who you call.
Thank you.
Well, I think, Chairman, you called myself first, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Clark, for confirming that perhaps complex situation. In view of the comments, Chairman, from the leader, I propose that the committee agrees to defer the discussion of the district plan review so that further work and consideration can take place and the outcome of any change in government policy can be known.
Thank you very much. Have I got a seconder for this, please? Councillor Marsh, thank you. Mr. Clark, just confirm, I go to the vote now, don't I? Hello?
Chairman, it's open to you to do so, but you have other speakers, so you would probably want to hear from them first.
Okay. Well, we'll go first of all to Councillor Eggleston.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, we're all on the same page in terms of taking more time to consider the update to the district plan. It would be a pity, I think, if members, whilst we pause this, didn't have the opportunity in another forum to review and consider the district plan policies that are being updated. And, you know, personally, I think we could set up a working group to consider that work. And at the same time, I would be really disappointed if members were denied the opportunity to thoroughly interrogate the evidence on the housing need, and we come back potentially back to the status quo where we are now, without members being able to intervene at an early stage before we get into Regulation 18. I'm not going to oppose the pausing. I'm just very worried that the pausing is only buying time. It's not giving members the opportunity to interrogate the evidence and fully participate before we go out to Regulation 18.
Quite so, quite so. Have you got a seconder for your motion?
I'm happy to second it, Chairman.
Thank you. Would you like to read your motion out, Councillor Eggleston, please?
I have circulated it to all members because I did ask you on Monday to circulate it, and for some reason, I'm not quite sure what happened, but it wasn't. So I shall read it slowly, but if members have it in front of them. The Scrutiny Committee for Housing Planning and Economic Growth establishes a working party to review, 1, the evidence for the proposed housing allocation in the draft district plan 2021 to 2038, 2, the fundamental alterations to 10 major policies in the current district plan and the addition of 6 new policies, and 3, the appropriateness or otherwise of including the sites identified for development in the plan in whole or part, and report its findings to the next appropriate meeting of the committee with recommendations for adoption by the committee and council. And then B, that the Chief Executive writes to the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, setting out Mid Sussex District Council's concern over the continued use of the standard method for calculating housing need, and urging the Secretary of State to bring forward proposals to change that method so that it is more appropriate to the needs of the district.
Thank you.
Chairman, could I just mention that we have a motion, Councillor Peacock's motion. So Councillor Eggleston is moving an amendment, and could I invite him, as opposed to doing what he's just read out, to have paragraph A as the addition to the motion we already have? Because the effect of the two is much the same, the leader writing to the Secretary of State or the Chief Executive writing to the Secretary of State.
I'm happy with that, Mr. Clark.
Thank
So
you.
what we've got, Chairman, is Councillor Peacock's motion plus the idea of having a working party of members from this committee.
I'll put this to the committee. Would they please signify the yes or no by pressing the yes or no button, please?
Sorry, Chair, could you repeat the question? I didn't catch that.
Yes, sorry, what are we voting for, please, Chairman?
Chair, would you like me to explain?
Yeah,
I'll explain. You're voting for Councillor Peacock's motion together with Part A of Councillor Eggleston's amendment, which is the idea of setting up a working party to review the matter from this committee.
Can I please interrupt with an amendment to the amendment on section A, please?
No, we vote on that first, and then you can move a further amendment, Councillor Band.
Okay. Thank you.
Six against. Thank you. That motion was rejected by 7 votes to 6.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Sorry.
5, 6. No, it wasn't. No, it was passed, I think.
I'm sorry, I just can't hear that. 8 votes in favour and 7 against. We now turn to Councillor Peacock's resolution, and so again, could I ask you, please, would you like to?
Chairman, that now becomes the motion.
Yeah.
And therefore, anybody else can now move an amendment to that.
Have I any more amendments to the Councillor Peacock's motion?
No. The what's been approved is Councillor Peacock's motion plus the addition from Councillor Eggleston for a working group.
Oh no.
So then, do we put this to the vote, Tom?
Yes, you put it to the vote again.
Right. So may I ask members to vote for or against by using the yes or no button, please?
Tom, can I, before we do, I don't understand what the hell we're voting for. Are we voting for to pause it, or are we voting for it with Councillor Eggleston's amendment? I really don't understand where we're at. Could you just explain, please, Tom?
You're voting for the motion put forward by Councillor Peacock with the addition of a request for there to be a scrutiny committee working party to look at the matters in the interim. So yes, you are pausing it with an addition.
And sorry, I'm interrupting again as a point of order. The amendment to this amendment, can I add that now or later? Please.
Well, it should be done now. We don't want to do it later. We don't want to come back to it.
Fine, thank you. If I may, the amendment states that the 10 major policies and 6 new policies, I'd like to remove the number content and relations to major policies and new policies, so that there's no number content in that. I mean, in which case I'm happy with that.
Fine.
Thank you.
Can we accept this, Tom?
Well, it's up to Councillor Eggleston and Councillor Peacock whether they accept it or not.
I'm happy to accept.
Councillor Peacock?
Muted.
To me, I think it complicates life, so I would not accept it personally.
Again, am I reducer sort of taking a vote on accepting sort of Councillor Laban's?
Yes,
not?
you are, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Laban has put forward a further motion.
Yeah, the only thing I should say, Chairman, he hasn't got a seconder yet.
Oh, could I have a seconder, please? I don't appear to have a seconder, so I think that that would be null and void.
Or is Councillor Mockford seconding it?
Oh, Councillor Mockford. Right, we put it to
I'm
the
not
vote.
sure. They've got their hands up.
I'm happy to second that, thank you.
Okay. We'll go back to the yes, no button to vote for this. So could I ask members to please do that now, please?
Neville, no.
Sorry, I've got the wrong one. How do I delete the yes button?
Click no. So reactions and then click.
Sorry?
Reactions.
And then what do I do now?
Click no.
Thank you. Thank you for your help. The motion is carried by 10 votes to 6, 10 votes to 8.
I don't think that's correct, Chairman, because there's only 15 members.
Oh, righto, sorry.
7 votes in favour and 7 against.
7 votes in favour and 7 against. So it will have my casting vote and I vote in favour.
You vote in favour, Chairman, because you voted against.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. I'm voting against it. Sorry,
Yeah.
I beg your pardon.
So that motion fails. So then we're back to Councillor Peacock's initial motion plus the addition from Councillor.
Sorry, I think we're all getting confused with these motions. So we're going back to Councillor Peacock's motion now. Again,
Councillor Eggleston addition.
with Councillor Eggleton's addition.
Yeah.
So could I again ask you to go to the indicate on the yes, no button, whether or not you're for or against it, please. Six.
That's 9 votes in favour and 4 against. That motion is carried.
9 votes for
5 against.
and 5 against. That motion is now carried. So I will now turn to the revised recommendation, which states, in view of the comments from the leader portfolio in the leader, the Scrutiny Committee for Housing, Planning and Economic Growth agrees to defer discussion of the district plan review so that further work and consideration can take place and the outcome of the change in the government policy can be known. So,
Point of order, Chair.
point of order.
Yeah, with the addition of.
Oh, sorry, with the addition of Councillor Eggleton's amendment. Thank you.
We just voted on that.
We've just voted and that's been agreed, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Right, turning now to item 9. Sorry, put comment 8. Scrutiny Committee of Housing, Planning and Economic Growth Work Programme. I'll ask Tom Clark to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. At the moment, it doesn't show any work, but I'd be surprised if what you've been discussing tonight won't come back in 8 weeks' time. Either it'll be your work or what the government has done in the interim.
Yes, I'm quite sure you're right. We should have mega work in the future. Finally, turning to question 9. Questions pursuant to the Council Procedure Rule 10.2. Due notice which has been given. I have none. I would like to apologise for a lot of the inconvenience tonight, but this is the first time I've had to do this. It's quite complicated. I wish you all a very good night. Thank you for attending. I will now close the meeting at 31 minutes past 6. Thank you very much indeed for your attendance.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman.
Cheers, Neville.
Thank you, Chairman.